Terms of reference for these meetings are that these drop-in sessions are provided with the intention of members coming together to share knowledge, experience and best practice on various aspects of technology, including software, which is of interest to u3as and their members. We are unable to offer one-to-one advice to u3as and their members, as all locations and abilities differ, and operational decisions need to be made by the individual u3as or their members. The items of equipment or software shown or listed in these sessions are there to give an idea of what may be needed and the approximate cost. It is not to be treated as a recommendation or that it is the only piece of equipment or software. What you may decide to purchase is for you or your own u3a to choose based on the available funds and your own particular needs. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. So welcome everybody. Lovely to see so many of you. I've got regular participants of our weekly drop-in sessions here. Got many others joining us today. Alison May, Head of Member Services at the u3a office, I believe, is here today as well. And in particular, our guest for today, Chris Winner, for more in a few minutes. John mentioned this earlier. If you haven't already done so, if you could possibly rename yourself with your first name, surname, and the name of your u3a, using the 3 dots in the top corner of your picture, maybe, or sometimes on the name label at the bottom. It's different on different devices. But if you can do that, that's a help to us just to know who's here and everything. So the u3a Let's Talk Tech team has a core team of 6, most of whom are here today. John Butler is here, Mike Field, David Martin. Brendan Mullen isn't, he gives us apologies for today. Vivek Nanda's here and I'm here. I'm the non-techie part of the team. I've got a few points about how we're going to run today's session. You've noticed that the session is being recorded and we hope to be able to share it in some manner to be agreed with the Third Age Trust once it's had a bit of editing to it. So if you don't want to be seen on screen, then please just turn off your video for now. This might also help to improve bandwidth for some people. During Chris's presentation, as you are at the moment, you'll all be muted so that there won't be disturbance from your unexpected phone call or the dog barking or whatever. And if a question occurs to you during the presentation, we'd appreciate if you could type that into the chat, preceded by 3 question marks, which makes it easy for the team to distinguish questions from comments. I've put an example in the chat already to show you what I mean. And also, once we're on to the questions and answer session, if you've got a follow-up question that's directly related to the question that's currently under discussion, then rather than sort of go to a different topic and then come back to the same one, we'll try and group them together in that way. So to show that you want to do that, could you use the raise hand feature, which you see in the reactions section of your Zoom menu? Specifically the one that has the words raise hand on it, not the one that just looks like a hand, because that will disappear from the screen. Okay, so we're recording, and the first thing that we're going to do in this session is a short poll, very short poll, to better understand our participants here. There are going to be 2 questions now relating to websites and 2 at the end of the session about Beacon. The question, Vivek's going to manage this bit. The questions will appear on the screen, the first one, and then you vote by clicking or tapping your answer. There'll be 1 answer in the first question. You're only allowed to pick 1, as many as you want to, as many as are applicable in the second. So I'll hand over to Vivek, if I may, to do that. He got them set up for us. Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm just going to start the polls and I'm going to give people about a minute. So I'm launching the poll and then I will share the results after we've finished filling it in for about 60 seconds. So hopefully you should be able to see this poll on your screen. Can you see it, Kathy?
Yes, it's fine on mine, and lots of people have started voting already. This is brilliant.
So I'll end the poll and then share the results so people can see the results. And you can see predominantly the audience today is site builder. You've got a few people who use something else and a couple who are currently using WordPress websites, and then others who are probably interested in this area. So I'll stop sharing that and I'll go on now to the second poll. And the second poll, if people start voting on what is the role that you have in terms of the activities. So, but basically the results are the majority of people are involved with websites in some form. And then some of them wearing multiple hats. So we've got quite a lot of people who are also committee members. And then one person from the U3 office, and then a couple of people who are not involved, but hopefully will get involved. So I'll stop sharing that and pass you back to Kathy.
Thanks, Vivek. So I'm delighted today to introduce Chris Winner to you. Currently chair of the SiteWorks steering team, also currently chair of her own u3a Prestatyn district, I believe it is, and also of the u3a North Wales network. She's also previously been the Third Age trustee for Wales, and has been and may be involved in the future with Beacon. And comes from a professional background of e-learning and ICT school effectiveness officer, I believe it was called, with Liverpool Education Authority. Said earlier, translating between the techies and the other people in words that both can understand. So that's really interesting. We'll go straight to your presentation now, Chris. I believe that you want to share screen at some point.
I do, yeah. I think
John or somebody has set that up for you.
I think that's okay, isn't it? It says one participant at a time.
Yes, yes.
Been allocated it, right? Just before I share the presentation, I have noticed that we do have some of the SiteWorks team, volunteer team here today. I noticed Ken is actually on the front screen. Ken Wheatley, just below me on my screen. So Ken is actually one of our volunteers, and I've seen Graham somewhere. So we've got, and there may be others, because we've got actually, is it five sets of screens now, so it's a lot of people here. So I joined, just to give you a bit of background before I share my screen, I joined the project right from the beginning when it was first set up. Myself, Nick Talbot, and Alan Russell. We formed the this steering group right at the beginning. So my presentation today is, you might not hear all of the information you think you're going to get, but what I am telling you, I will be telling you about where we are up to at the moment. And I would like to say right from the beginning, the SiteWorks project started from scratch, from nothing. All we had was the brief that we needed, the people, and I'll come on to it when I talk about my presentation, but Site Builder wanted to stop and they needed a replacement. The trust needed a replacement. So I'm going to share my screen now, and hopefully, I will just say, I do get a bit click happy. So sometimes I'll jump screens, but I will usually find my way back. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen now. So I'm going to move on to the title of my talk, which we obviously know about. It's from Site Builder to SiteWorks. I want to give you a little bit of background. I'm sure looking at the poll that's just happened, I'm quite aware now that a lot of people, the majority of people here, do know about SiteWorks, Site Builder, I should say, rather than SiteWorks. But just to give you a little background information about it, some things you might not know. At the moment, there are over 700 u3as, networks, nations, regions, and subject advisors. who use Site Builder. And I'm glad I put subject advisors in there, because I've seen Frances Halliday, and Frances is the subject advisor for climate change. So subject advisors also use Site Builder. When did Site Builder start? I don't know if any of you know that, but know when it started, but I didn't know, and I asked around to try and find out when the first reference to Site Builder was, and I used the Wayback Machine. I don't know if any of you have used Wayback, but I managed to find the first reference on the Wayback Machine to Site Builder, and it was on December the 28th, 2010. So obviously, Site Builder had been developed before 2010 or during 2010. And this is the first, what you're looking at here is the first snapshot of the u3as that were using Site Builder from the very beginning. So Site Builder, which is great, but it's now outdated. And the two people, and it was created by two people, Richard and Susan, the people who created Site Builder and currently support it and have been supporting it all the way through, want to retire, which I think is fair enough. It's over 12 years old now. It's time for a refresh. So the Site Builder project, or the SiteWorks project, I should say, was set into motion. It all started in August, between August and September last year. And the project was set up to create a replacement for Site Builder. That was the initial project, to create a replacement for Site Builder. The project now, we call it SiteWorks. So what was the task? Well, the first task was, first of all, to set up a steering committee, and that was set up. The requirements are that we needed to find a solution that would give u3as a web tool, a web authoring, a web creation tool, a web building tool that had the same functionality of Site Builder, but in a more modern way. Obviously wanted to bring things up to date. We also wanted to find a tool, something that was flexible enough to include the use of plugins that would give additional functionality. So basically to build on the functionality that Site Builder had, or still has. And we also wanted to find a solution going forward, not currently, but going forward, plan for the future. We wanted to find a solution that would allow some sort of link into Beacon, some sort of integration or link to Beacon. So they were the requirements. The next thing the steering group had to do was to consider possible solutions. And there were really, I suppose, three solutions that we looked at. One of them would be to buy in the company to design a bespoke system for us. So that was a consideration. Another consideration was that we might go with something like Wix and buy in a ready-made solution. But neither of those first two options seemed to fit the bill, because u3as are all different. As we know, they all have different requirements. Their websites are all different. We wanted something that would allow more creativity from the user point of view. And the only way to do that would be to create something ourselves. And that was what we decided to do. That we would use open source software and create our own solution, because we are u3a users, we are u3a members. We're all from u3as. We know what u3as want. We know how u3as work. We had found in the past, working with companies, that they don't really quite understand how u3a can be one organisation but all independent. So being u3a members, we actually know that side of u3a. So it's not a one size fits all. We have to cater for all of our different users. Open source software, well, the most logical choice was WordPress. And WordPress was chosen for a number of reasons. One of them being, or the main one probably being, 43.2% of all websites on the internet were created using WordPress. It's a flexible, It's flexible open source software, relatively easy to use compared with perhaps Site Builder, although I find Site Builder really easy to use. Some people have found it difficult. Obviously, SiteWorks and WordPress is a learning curve, but it is easy to use. It's also sustainable. The WordPress releases different updates and things continue 2 or 3 times a year. It's sustainable going forward. And we noticed it also from the poll that some u3as are already using, have gone their own way and used WordPress to develop their own websites. So how to develop the project, that was our next, I'm not going to say issue, our next challenge. We obviously needed people to make it happen. We had a steering group, we had the ideas, we needed people to make the project work. And because we were doing it in-house, those projects would be volunteers. We went through a recruitment process in sort of September, or the end of August, September last year. The initial cohort of volunteers recruited by advertising in TAM and through newsletters, the email newsletters out to u3as. We did have a large number of volunteers coming back at that point, all with different expertise, different ways, different things that they did, different backgrounds they came from. And we had this group of volunteers, and we have now currently over 60 volunteers, just to give you an idea. But the initial volunteers that came forward, we held a series of meetings to outline the nature of the project, what the project would be, and areas where we would need people to support the project. All of the volunteers, so we went through our meetings, I've just said that one, all of the volunteers had to agree to becoming a trust volunteer because they would be working with u3as on behalf of the Third Age Trust. It was an insurance requirement. So all of our volunteers in the SiteWorks team have to be trust volunteers. They have to go through the registration and induction process. And there were 1 or 2 people who didn't want to do that, so they kind of dropped off. Having the volunteers come in and having been through the meeting process, we then identified where the teams would be that they would be best placed, and that was by mutual agreement. So the volunteer would come in, had a certain background in a particular area, and with the teams would be set up according to their background and the needs of the project. So I'm going to go through, and I know I'm going through this quite quickly. So the current teams that we have and the responsibilities of those teams. Well, the first team that we have, and it's a small team, is the project management team. The project management team have oversight of the whole project. They keep things on track. Obviously, if you've got a project of the scale of of SiteWorks, everything has to be kept really tight. We're currently using open projects as a tool to keep track of the progress, and it's where bugs are reported, fixing happens, and change management. So they use open projects. We also have the coding team, and the coding team were one of the first teams to get into action, basically. And the responsibility of the coding team, which is quite obvious, they would be the ones that would take the vanilla WordPress and create u3a SiteWorks. And they would be working if you like, taking the WordPress and making it into something that would work with u3as, basically in the same way that Site Builder currently works. And the solution, of course, had to be not just applied to u3as, it would need to be flexible enough to be used by networks, by the nations and regions. I put nations in there because Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales, nations as well as the regions in England, and the subject advisors all have different needs. If we'd gone to an outside company to ask for a solution, I think they would have had a bit of a problem understanding the requirements that we have. And all of the Site Builder sites that I've mentioned, the regional ones, the u3a ones, and the way that the subject advisor use them are all different. And the SiteWorks solution has to offer the same functionality, basically. One of the other key things about the coding and development team, whatever they came up with would have to be straightforward and easy to use. We also have a communications team, and the responsibilities of the communications team, as the title suggests, they're the ones who will eventually manage the website. They create updates on the project that will go out externally to all of the u3as and other site builder users and other u3as who would find the information of interest, as well as to internal, and by internal I mean the tattle board, the trust board, and the site builder users themselves. So we call that the internal use. We also have a hosting team. The hosting team are currently working with the trust to identify a suitable hosting solution. And when I say suitable hosting solution, there are so many criteria that the company would have to meet, including obviously things like backup and security, as well as all the things like rollout of plugins, etc., as they come on stream. We do have currently 10 test sites that are in operation, and we have the test sites set up because we need them to be able to look at the software, look at the SiteWorks product that we are creating at this point, and ensuring that it works appropriately. And I'll come on to more about that later on. The other teams that we have a team who will be responsible for migration. The migration process is moving a site builder site onto SiteWorks. And that, you know, it might sound quite straightforward, but it isn't, because the way that Site Builder was created is different from any other web creation tool. And a migration plugin, if you like, had to be created by the coding team in order to allow that to happen. The responsibility of the migration team will be to allocate to any u3a that's migrating, any u3a that's moving across. They will be allocated a dedicated migrator. They will also be issued with a pre-migration checklist to ensure that their site builder site is ready to be migrated, so that it can go through the migration tool and migrate onto SiteWorks. The length of time that a migration will take will vary, and that will obviously depend on the size of the website, the content on the website, etc. So the migration process, we know what it will be, but how long it will take for each individual u3a, we don't know. And currently we are thinking, when we begin the rollout, we're currently thinking it could take up to 2 years to migrate everyone. But because we don't know until we start migrating, we can't put a timescale on that. One of the things that we are hoping to do, when the initial cohort of u3as have been through their migration process, and here I'm thinking more about our pioneer sites, we would like to use those people to support other u3as through the migration process. And that is something built into our pioneer work, which I'll talk about later on. So resources, the resources that we have, our key resource really are our 60+ members, volunteer members. When a member volunteers, as I say, they are sent, somebody will write in as I'd like to volunteer to be part of the project. One of the things that I've actually been doing this, one of the things we have to do is to look at talk to each volunteer individually, really, to see where they would best fit into, which team they would best fit into, and how they can best support the project. Following their initial discussions, they would be put in touch with one of the team leaders to talk through what the work of that team involves. They would then go through their allocation, their TV induction. We also need to, following the induction, the majority of our volunteers that will be working with u3as will have a SiteWorks email address that has to be set up. That's set up by the trust. Then when the volunteers have been through the induction process, and they have their SiteWorks email address, then we can allocate them, or not, I don't mean allocate them, we can assign them access to the Teams area. We use Microsoft Teams to hold all of our documents and all of the information related to the project. All of our spreadsheets, etc., all held on Teams, and our volunteers have to go through the induction process before they can go on to the trust teams. So resources in this instance, I'm talking about people. We do also have resources later on when we come on to the training materials. We have a testing team, and the testing team are currently very busy with our pioneers. One of the responsibilities of the testing team is to test software releases. As when WordPress has a release, we need to look at that release and make sure that release is appropriate to use within our SiteWorks project. They also test migrated sites. So before a site goes live, a site will be migrated onto a test site. Any bugs and things can be looked at and picked up by the testing team in conjunction with the u3a web managers. And the bugs could be things like something wrong with the migration process. It could be even something as simple as a spelling mistake somewhere on a website. All of these things are picked up by the testing team, and they are reported then using open projects. They're reported through to the change board. The change board then allocates that problem, that issue, to the appropriate team to sort it out. So if it's a coding problem, then it would be referred to the coding problem. The testing team would then go back and retest to make sure everything is okay. And following that, once the testing is complete, everyone is happy with that migrated website, then it can be signed off and it will go live. To go along with the migration and the migration setup, we also have a training program, and a great deal of work has already been done on creating training materials and resources for migrating u3as to use. Some of these you can actually see, and I'll show you later on through the presentation. Some of them are already on the SiteWorks website. The training materials as well, and I will come on to this as well a bit later on. The training materials are there and available for people to use at this moment. You can go in, if you are going to migrate your site, you can go in and start using the training materials. It's always good to be ahead of the game, really, when it comes to sorting your website out, ready for the migration to take place. One of the challenges for as far as the documentation and training is concerned is to make sure that it's kept up to date. I mentioned earlier that 2 or 3 times a year, WordPress will send out an update, and our training materials have to be kept up to date with that. There's no point having old material there. It needs to be constantly reviewed and kept up to date with the new functionality that comes out with the WordPress releases, as well as the additional functionality that may be added by our coding team in the form of plugins, etc. So the products that we have, we're creating currently, and these are all currently under development, sort of simultaneously, a starter pack. These are referred to as the test tranches, a starter pack, the migration process for u3as, and the migrated pack, if you like. And when I talk about pack, I'm talking about the software and the migration process. We've also got the migration to networks, which will be slightly different from a migration to a u3a. For example, networks don't have groups necessarily set up in the same way that u3a would have groups set up. And then there would be migration to the regions and devolved nations who might want a totally different solution or way of working. The basic product will be the same. It's just the way that it's rolled out and what the end user will be wanting to do with the product. And when I say product here, I'm talking about SiteWorks. So the test tranches that we are currently operating, and these are in operation at the moment. Tranche 1 is the alpha version. That's the basic version, that nothing's happened. This is the basic version of the software that's been created by the development team. Tranche 2 is the beta version, and the beta version will include the new plugins that come, or not the new plugins, but the new upgrades that come from WordPress itself, as well as any additional plugins that the coding team have included, and I'll talk about plugins later on, and starter packs. What's meant by this, a starter pack is an empty vessel. Starter packs would be for u3as that don't want to haven't got software, they don't want to migrate a site builder site. It may be something like a new u3a or something coming on board, or it might be a u3a that's used another form of software. There were a couple identified in the poll you did earlier. There are some people that do their own thing and they don't even know what they're using. We had a couple of don't knows there. So the starter pack could be useful for them. At the moment, we are working through the pioneer phase. We have 20 websites or 20 site builder sites that are forming our pioneers, and the pioneers are generally web managers who have experience, or experienced web managers, and they have agreed, and it's all a negotiated agreement with the u3a and Mark Bailey, who heads up this team, Mark Bradley, I should say, who heads up this team. They've agreed to be guinea pigs, because they are working with a website that, yes, a website or SiteWorks that the coding team knows it works, but does it work effectively in the real world? So the pioneers are literally the guinea pigs, and the guinea pigs are the ones who, working with the testing team, will be hopefully ironing out any of the issues and the bugs that pop up during the different phases of the migration. And then we have the pioneer sites. The pioneer sites will be the ones that are moving onto the beta version of the software. I should actually point out, in tranche 1, we have a u3a that's already been migrated onto a test site and is currently undergoing the testing, the alpha testing of the product and bug fixing. And then following them, we have Taunton and High Wycombe u3as also coming on stream. So they are working on the alpha version of the SiteWorks solution. They've been migrated onto a test site. They're going through the testing process. As soon as that has completed successfully, we then move on to the tranche 2 testing. The tranche 2 release will be version 6.2 of the WordPress software. That's been released recently. Plus, the pioneer sites in tranche 2 or phase 2 will be the ones who go on to the beta version of our SiteWorks solution. So the beta version being the one that's had all the bugs taken out of it. It's clean and ready to go. They will then go through the process of testing again to make sure that any other issues that come up, because as different u3as come in, different problems may well come to light. They all have to be ironed out before we can go into a general release. So the starter sites I briefly mentioned earlier on, the starter sites will be available for new u3a starting up. The first one of those would be Glasgow. Glasgow is a new u3a, and we do have I think, and Alison is here, so Alison will know better than I do. I think there are 6 brand new u3a. It has been the practice in the past for a new u3a, when it starts up, to be offered Site Builder as their web solution. And the same offer will apply, but in this instance, we won't be using Site Builder now. It'll be straight into WordPress. So it's an empty vessel. I refer to it as an empty vessel. It might be a more techie term for the basic software that doesn't need migrating. Here you are. this is how you can work with it. Then any u3a coming in will be supported, and the training will be available for them to get them started on using WordPress. We will also have, as part of that, non-migrating sites, and I did mention briefly early on, these could be sites such as u3as who are using another solution. They're using their own web. They might have used Dreamweaver or Front Page in the past, and they want to come into the Trust solution. So we would class those as a non-migrating site. They'd be given the basic empty website, and they would build that up on their own. So they're the starter sites. Two different ways that might work. Next steps that we need to move on to is the planned migration and the schedule and process. And this is subject to change. As I've mentioned, each u3a is different, and it's a learning curve. So as the u3as are migrated, we will learn from each of those processes. Hopefully by the end of it, everything will become really streamlined. But at this stage, the actual migration schedule is still to be identified. We know what will happen, but we don't quite know when it will happen yet. And obviously nothing can happen really until we've been through all the alpha and beta testing, and then we have a solid product that we can roll out. Prior to any migration, prior to even maybe people being on the scheduling, one of our newer volunteers has offered to run training. It will probably be from about June onwards. She will be offering 28, possibly 28 training sessions. This is the plan so far. 28 training sessions for groups of about 20 to 25 people. And the purpose of that would be to familiarise web managers with the new WordPress environment. If it could be, some people use it already, but other people might be sort of put off by it because they don't know what it is. This is an opportunity to going into the migration schedule, to get your hands on and have a look at what WordPress will do and how it will work. And it will be, hopefully, the idea behind it, go through the training process, and when they come to being migrated onto SiteWorks, they'll know what's happening and where to go. Training resources are also available, as I mentioned earlier. Training resources are also available on the SiteWorks website, and we would encourage u3as to start looking at that now. It talks about the different things, ways that WordPress works, and because WordPress is the SiteWorks basis, if you go through those training materials when it comes to migrating, then you'll be in a better place, if you like, to know where to start and how things will work, and the functionality of the product. I mentioned that the u3as would be offered, or they would be offered, any migrating site will be allocated a dedicated migrator. And the dedicated migrator will be the person who works with that u3a through the whole migration process. It would be the same person. That was something that was made very clear by the migration team. It needed to be one person. So when you know what's going to happen, you know what you're going to do, you know who you're working with, you know who to go to if there is an issue. And the idea of the migrator is that they will handhold the u3as through the process of migrating. And I mentioned the pre-migration and site preparation checklist. This will be very important to ensure that the site builder site is ready to move. When we had the issue with the site builder host, from my perspective in my u3a, I found it really useful because we were able to tidy up our website, our site builder site, get rid of any documents, historical things that were no longer needed, archive those, and sort of basically have a clean, I'm going to say clean site with no extraneous material as part of it. Pre-migration checklists will take u3as through the process of making sure their sites are ready to migrate. So the migration process itself, the day and days or days of migration would be agreed with the u3a. It'll be a mutual agreement with the u3a and the migrator. And one of the things when the date is fixed, we need to know that the site is ready to go so that everything is ready in order for the migration to take place. The post-migration support will also be available. Obviously, we can't just migrate a website across onto a new product and expect a u3a to know how to use it. So there will be a support all the way through, and there will be a help desk as well, in the same way that Beacon has a help desk. SiteWorks will have a help desk. And there will be post-migration support. As I mentioned, you can't expect a u3a to do it all on their own. And we would like, if possible at this point, to include as part of that support process, post-migration support. u3as have already migrated. And one useful way to do it might be to work with your neighbouring u3a. I know in North Wales Network, we're used to talking to each other. If anyone has an issue about something, I'd like to think when the migration takes place for our u3as in North Wales, that somebody could ring me up and say, oh, have you done this, or do you know about doing this, before we hand it on to SiteWorks. But that's something, SiteWorks support team, that's something for the future. Additional training resources will also be made available as things like new plugins and new upgrades come on stream. Additional training resources will be prepared and created. I will just mention here on the subject of plugins, there are lots of, I don't know how many hundreds of plugins available for WordPress. The SiteWorks solution will use approved plugins, so we will go through an approval sort of I don't know the word I'm looking for, but we will go through an approval process by the SiteWorks team to ensure that the plugins do what we want them to do and that they are stable and robust. And we will only use plugins that we've approved, and we would, if any u3a wanted to add their own additional plugins, it would be down to them, but we can't guarantee support. We can only guarantee support for the plugins that SiteWorks has put in. If a u3a want to do its own thing, obviously people can do their own thing, but we couldn't expect our team to understand and know how to support all of the thousands of plugins that are available. So I'll just put that out there so that people know. Communications as part of the project, I did mention that we do have a comms team. And one of the things we've started doing is to send out regular updates to u3as about the process at the stage of process that we're at so far. We're sending those out roughly on a monthly basis. We also have to send updates to the board and the trust board and the tattle board as well, keep them up to date about what's going on. Information goes out via the newsletter, the email newsletter to u3as. We will be sending to u3as as part of the project direct communications with the site managers for the migrating u3as. We're also going to be using TAM. There have been some articles in TAM, but not very much. TAM particularly for milestone achievements and things like that. We will also have social media channels that they're not set up at the moment because we need to get the product up and running first, and then we will have the social media channels up and running for people to communicate with our comms team. The website, and I'm going to click on the website now, hopefully you'll all be able to see it. Yeah, this is our website that we have at the moment. It is very basic, I should tell you, it's actually built in WordPress. This is I would say it's a one-stop shop for any information about what we're doing. At the moment, yes, it's taken a while to get things updated because we're still having to train some of the communications team on how to use it and things like that. Everything is starting from scratch, remember. Some of you, thank you, will have filled in this form here. If you haven't filled it in, please do so, because one of the slight problems we had was that we needed a list of all the current site builder web managers And Richard, thankfully, he sent out we created a form. The form is here where we ask for certain information, contact details for the web manager and or web managers for any site builder u3a. That information is there. We can contact the chairs and secretaries and treasurers through the portal or through the database that the trust holds. And I understand, I don't know if it's active yet, but web manager details and beacon manager details will also be included as part of the what we would refer to as the annual return. Alison might be able to answer that. It's now all done online through the portal, and hopefully web managers will be included in that and beacon managers will be included in that. So this gives an outline of the project. This is Worcester. Worcester is one of the pioneer sites. Worcester, this is the site builder front page, and this is how it can look in WordPress. And it gives you a bit of background about the project there. I'm not going to click on all of these, I'll ask you to do that. Background to the project gives you basically the information I've just given you now. Latest information, this is our update for this month. One of the things I will point out, we do need people. Although we've got a cohort of over 60 volunteers at the moment, we do have people needed in specific areas. We need, and you can read them as well as I can here. And if anyone is interested in joining the team, have a look at one of these. You contact me, my email address is there. Contact me and let me know, and I will point you in the direction of the appropriate person to take you through that. You would need to become a trust volunteer. If you are already a trust volunteer, that's really easy because you're on the list and you can jump straight to straight into the project. So we need a training and documentation lead. Unfortunately, Richard, who was leading that project, has had to drop off. Risk management. In a project like this, there are also always risks. We need someone to take on that role. Migration engagement coordinator. So an engagement, they're the people who would have the first line of contact with the u3as. These are all to do with migration. We need someone to look after open projects. I mentioned at the beginning that open projects is the tool that we are using for project management. And currently there are several people doing it, but we need one person to take over the whole coordination role of that. Although other team leaders will be involved in the information that goes in there. And resources coordinator. That's basically to look after, in this instance, people, the role that I'm currently doing myself. And it does mention there that all volunteers have to be trust volunteers. Resources here. This is, and I would encourage you to have a look at this if you haven't already done so. Basic information here about WordPress itself. This is all online material about WordPress, guides, videos, etc. If you click on this button, this takes you into our specific SiteWorks training. This video, I would encourage you to have a look at. I'm not going to click on it now. This actually shows you SiteWorks in action. It's a video made by Nick Talbot. Nick is the coding and development team coordinator. It's a 24-minute long video, so I'm not going to click on it now, but do please go and have a look at this. Down here, we have preparing your site, and this is all relating to our project and the migration and the training for the SiteWorks itself. So that's on the website. And back here. The FAQ page, which I didn't show you on the website, the FAQ page has all of the, not all of them, but when people post a question, send in a question, the question is answered by the appropriate person, and that FAQ would then be put onto the website. So that's something to certainly keep an eye on and contribute to. If you have any questions, that's where it would go, so that other people can see it, not reinventing the wheel. I heard some of you mention that the forum, the WordPress development forum set up by Nick Talbot, and anyone can register. You can register yourself on here, and this is a great place to, I'm not going to click through it because you can do that at your leisure, but this is where people discuss WordPress particularly. So it's not just for SiteWorks people. Anyone using WordPress or anyone who has an interest in it can come onto the forum and have a look and find out what's going on. That's me. I'm not going to go into it today. So if I just get that one out of the way. And I think that's me. I've gone through whistle stop speed, so I'm going to stop sharing now, because I know that I have missed and not included a lot of information that you would probably want to know about. So now is your opportunity to ask me questions. And Alison is here. If it's anything that relates to the trust, then Alison can answer. I hope you found that useful. I know it was very quick, whistle stop through, but I think I've covered as much as I can without going into huge detail. So
indeed you have, Chris. Thank you very much indeed. I know there are quite a number of questions in the chat already.
Oh, well, there are loads.
And some of them overlap with each other. I don't know if, I think John is looking at these. If there's a chance of you kind of amalgamating the ones that are on very, very similar questions.
I'll try to do that. I think we've got currently about 12, I think, but I will look at them as we scan down. Starting with the first one from Maggie Sims. What, if anything, will be the cost to U3As for using the
I knew
SiteWorks?
That was going to come up.
Yeah.
And I didn't put it in because at the moment, I can't tell you. One of the things I will say, it was agreed at the beginning of the project that the cost will be, until Site Builder ends, the cost to U3As there won't be a charge for Site Builder. Going forward, I can't say after Site Builder ceases to exist. Site Builder will cease when the last U3A has been migrated and Site Builder hosting ceases. There may have to be something, but obviously the decision wouldn't be made then. The decision will have to be made during the migration process. Alison's got a hand up. Alison.
Yeah, thanks very much. Just to say that at the moment, there aren't any plans to charge for SiteWorks at the moment, but we will have to see how it goes and what the costs are involved. And if there is a cost, that will obviously have to be signed off by the board, and we will, of course, let you know as that if and when that process happens. But at the moment, there are no costs, as Chris said.
Thank you.
Okay. Right, moving on to the next question. Question from Pamela Davidson, Bearsden and Milgay. How will people sign up for the training when it becomes available?
That will be put out to U3As. We will let U3As know. How we haven't got the process yet set up, but we will let U3As know, and it will be the Site Builder U3As primarily. The information will go out to, as I say, we're still in the process of collating all of the information back from U3As about who the current web managers are, but you'll be the first to know. How it will be allocated, I don't know. It may well be, 25 places are available. First to sign up. If you can't get on that one, you get on the next one, and we will take it from there. But
okay.
There will be a sign up process.
Okay, next one is from Errol Fabian at Tunbridge Wells u3a. Will non-migration sites have to wait until the migration sites have been dealt with?
Say that again.
Will non-migration sites have to wait until the migration sites have been dealt with?
No, they can run in tandem, because if it's a non-migration site, they will be allocated when it's ready. The starter version of SiteWorks is the empty version. I call it the empty version. Nothing in it. So it's just the basic template, if you like, that U3As can use. So a non-migrating site, as soon as the starter site is ready, and the same thing will apply to new U3As, as soon as the starter site is ready, it would be made available. But we can't just put the starter site out until it's undergone testing. So it will have to go through the same rigorous testing as the migrating sites, with the exception that the migration testing has to be part of that process for the migrators. For the non-migrating U3As, the starter site will be easy to put through the testing process, because some of the issues have arisen through the migration process. If you're not starting, you're not migrating, then I think they call it the vanilla version. The vanilla version of the site will be available as soon as it's gone through the rigorous testing. Yeah.
Great. I've got a long question from Richard Bedford at Stroud u3a. I might praise it a bit. Please tell us a bit about the Beacon SiteWorks interface. I am looking to use Beacon member portal and also better use of the group's events functionality. Want to know a little bit about that overlapping functionality, basically.
Well, as I said when I was doing the talk, that is not the prime concern at the moment. It is being considered. The prime concern at the moment is to get to fulfil the brief, which was to replace Site Builder with SiteWorks. The added benefit will come later on, so I can't give you any process. I can't say how that's going to happen, because the coding people who will need to work with the Beacon team to get things going are still working through the making sure that the testing is okay and fixing any bugs. But hopefully, at some point during this year, they can start looking at the way that Beacon will interface. I'm not going to put any timeline on it, because I don't want to say it is under consideration. That's all I can say. And as soon as that information becomes available, that will be made available to U3As, because a lot of people, I mean, my U3A is a Beacon and a Beacon user and a Site Builder user, and I know that question will apply to lots of U3As. So I'm sorry I can't give you a full answer, because we don't have one, and I'm not going to speculate. So we have to just leave it there until such time that the announcement will be made. And when I mentioned, as I was doing the talk, about things like plugins and releases, that will be included as part of that, because that release would be, it wouldn't be necessarily all U3As. That's something that we have to consider. Not all U3As use Beacon, and not all U3As use Site Builder. And there are Site Builder U3As that don't use Beacon. There are Beacon users that don't use Site Builder. So there are lots of considerations that have to be made. How the interface works, I mean, that's quite straightforward. If you use Beacon, use Site Builder. Once the plugin or however it's going to work has been identified, then that's quite straightforward. But how that is rolled out to people, only the people who want it, that would be another thing to consider, part of the process. So I'm sorry I can't give you a full answer to that, because we don't have one.
Great. Next up is John Hunt from Exmouth District. You may have sort of covered this. What organisation will be hosting the organisation? Will it be WordPress itself, or will it include reliable and regular backups?
Oh, that one of the things that is definitely, I was talking in the SiteWorks, we have a small steering group meeting in each Wednesday morning, and that's one of the things that was coming up, talking about the hosting and the hosting requirements. That will be in conjunction with the trust. But everything, you mentioned backups locally, backups by the host will be needed. The provision for a U3A, even though they've had the central backup, if you like, provision for the U3A itself to be able to back up as well. It'll be the security issue. It'll be things to do with rollout of updates and things. All of these have to be considered. All of the other, how it integrates, how it all works. So that the hosting will be looking at that. As I said, that is being worked on with the hosting team at the moment and the trust. And we can't say any more about that at the moment. It's still under negotiation, but it is something that is a priority, and it is currently being looked at. That's all I can say at the moment. I'd rather not say anything, say something that's not going to happen, because people have expectations. And all I can say is it's being worked on, being looked at, and all of the considerations that you've mentioned that we have will have to be taken into account for the provider, by the provider and by us. It'll be a joint process.
John Hunt has put his hand up with something directly related to this, I think.
Thank you very much. Yeah, obviously what's behind my question is to avoid the chaos and nightmare of what happened before Christmas. And I just wanted to get it straight in my own mind. I'm right in saying that you've got WordPress as an organization, and am I right in saying you go to a third-party organization to host? Is that correct? And that's what you're discussing at the moment.
WordPress, there is a WordPress organization.
Yes.
WordPress who produces WordPress.
Yes.
SiteWorks is a development of WordPress by our SiteWorks team. So we are using WordPress to create a SiteWorks project that will work with u3as. Any u3a now could go out and get WordPress, and many have. And I think about 300 have actually gone out and done that. They've got the WordPress from the WordPress builders, and they've set up their own site. What we're doing is something similar to Site Builder in that it will be template driven. It'll be easier for people who don't know and not use WordPress. It'll be a handheld solution, so that there'll be help through the process. We'll have support for it. But going to what you were saying, where the hosting is, I can't say if it's going to be hosted by WordPress. It's unlikely to do that. It's unlikely to do that. I think it'll be more likely that it will be what do we call it? What's the word you use in the office, Alan? Preferred supplier, because we could go out to tender, but a preferred supplier means that they've already been through that process. So it's likely that it will be a preferred supplier rather than going to WordPress, because I don't know how that would work anyway. But I'm not techy enough to understand that.
That's very helpful. I was just trying to get it all clear in my own mind. Thank you very much. That's very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, I've got Jane Harrington from Waltham Forest u3a. Question: would it be useful, necessary, or downright counterproductive to go on short local courses on WordPress in the next few months? I think
if you can find a local course on WordPress, any access to WordPress would be useful. Because when I actually Nick Talbot set up the WordPress website, I never used WordPress before. Nick put the template up, and I worked. I'd use things like Moodles and things, so I found it quite straightforward to do. But if you've never seen WordPress, I think if you can find a local one, go on a local one. There's also information on our website. There are links to YouTube videos to show you certain things, how to do this and how to do that. I think once people see it, once people start using it, it's more WYSIWYG than that. Do you still use that word these days, WYSIWYG? What you see is what you get. I've used Dreamweaver, and I like Dreamweaver because you had a WYSIWYG interface where you type it in. So what you see is basically what you get. A few little tweaks and things to do the layout. Where if you think about Site Builder, that wasn't WYSIWYG really, was it? It isn't WYSIWYG. You can type into your thing and you have to put all these funny hashtags and lines and bits and pieces. But this one, you just type it in. You get a block, type the information in, block, type your information in. Heading, is it a heading? Yes, da-de-da. And it's much more straightforward and flexible. I think that's the other thing. It's more flexible. But yes, going back to the question, yes, I would suggest if you can get on a short course, WordPress, it'll be, you hit the ground running really. You've got some information there. But do have a look at our website, because there are lots of links to resources and things that you can click on and go through now.
Francis wanted to ask something. Francis Kilman wants to ask something on this.
Hi, it was more a case of saying something, because I would say the information on the website, if you go to the SiteWorks website and go through the basics on WordPress and look at the video, I think there's enough information there for most, anybody who's done any web editing to pick up the basics. I would say that before they looked at spending a lot of money on doing a course.
Yeah.
So,
I wasn't thinking people spending money. There are free, some you can get access to free things. But yes, the website has all the links to free resources. They've all been put in ready for you to use. But I was thinking if someone wanted, if locally, some of the charitable organisations around our way run courses on different things, if they're free and you can go and talk to people, that's the advantage as well, isn't it?
Yes.
You can, if you're doing it sort of face to face or in a
different people learn in different ways.
People do learn in different ways, don't they?
And also by downloading the current version onto your local system, so you can have a play. And it doesn't matter if you trash it, which I've done once.
No, this is it, isn't it? The local version. That's
yeah.
And there is a link on the website to that. The local version you can download onto your own computer.
And I would
fully
recommend it. Yeah,
I learn by doing. Personally, I'm not a manual. I don't read a manual. If I have to read a manual, I won't do it. I'll work it out for myself. And obviously, in some instances, you have to. But that is the same with the local version. As you say, if you break it, you just download another version. So yeah, that is a good point.
Okay, we've got a ton of questions, Chris, so I need to also move on, please, if that's okay. Di Anderson says, have U3As been asked whether they want to migrate to WordPress? I'm not aware that we have at Bedale and District.
Say that again.
Have U3As been asked whether they want to migrate to SiteWorks WordPress? I'm not aware that we have from Bedale and District.
Oh, I don't know that all U3As have been contacted yet.
Mm.
And I will say that from the basis that we don't have the contact details for all U3As, but we've had responses to that form. It's a GDPR thing. I will just say it's a GDPR thing that we've had to go out and get the information ourselves. But all U3As at some point will be contacted to say, would you like to migrate, or would you like to go it alone by using the empty vessel, as it were? So Alison's got her hand up. So no, I don't think they have been contacted yet. Alison.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Thanks, everyone. Yeah, so we have put notifications in the newsletter in TAM through mailings that we've sent out to the U3A, so people know it's coming. I think what possibly not all U3As may be aware of is that Richard and Susan, who are the two brilliant volunteers that look after Site Builder and manage it, have been doing it, as Chris said, for such a long time. And it's actually bespoke code, so it's not viable to keep going with that bespoke code. It's not future-proof. So Site Builder will end. So the choices for U3As, and obviously some may choose another choice, but the choices for U3As are to migrate over to WordPress or to seek their own solution somewhere else. But unfortunately, we do have to end Site Builder because we are on borrowed time, really, with all of the work that Richard and Susan have put in and the future proofing. And as Chris said earlier, they would like to retire, which does seem fair after 12 years of, single-handedly managing 700 sites.
Yeah, but going back to the point that was made about the have U3As been notified? That, as Alison said, yes, the information is out there, but we haven't contacted all of the Site Builder U3As to say, would you like to migrate or wouldn't you? I mean, that's something that perhaps we could do, but nearer the time to when we've got a product ready to go fully, that we know is robust. Maybe when the second pioneer phase starts, we could start putting the word out to U3As. And when the pre-migration training comes available, the training courses sessions become available, put it out then. Yeah, that's a good point.
I've got a number of U3A questions here, basically relating to timescale. So I won't go into all of them, but effectively, timescale for U3As who want to be early adopters, timescales for people who want to register for SiteWorks, the like of that, and non-migrating U3As, I think you covered earlier. I think timescales is important. That's one of the questions that's repeatedly coming up on the chat.
Yeah, timescale, we would totally agree. Timescale is important. but we are thinking about the timescale, but we're not going to make anything public until we have been through the initial testing phases. I think everyone would understand the reason for that, because if we find something major happens, but we are, we've got this 2-year timescale to get everyone migrated. Hopefully it can happen quicker than that. But until we've gone through the first pioneer testing and we've got our first live sites up, I think then we'll have a better idea of how long each migration is going to take. At the moment, as I say, it's a bit sketchy. We are looking at our in our cohort of pioneer sites. We've got some small ones, some larger ones, because we are envisaging that the larger ones are going to take longer because they've got more information. They may throw up more issues as part of the migration process. We don't know that until we do it. So when our cohort of pioneers has been through, then our two phases of pioneers have been through, then we'll be in a better position to know how long things are going to take. But I think it's better not to say anything or not to speculate for people to be disappointed. In my opinion, it's better to say, well, we don't know yet, but we'll let you know, and it'll come as a lovely surprise when it's next week. But it's not going to be next week. Don't quote me. It won't be next week because there is a lot going on. And it's like, what did they say about a duck or a swan swimming across the water? What I'm saying just sounds very basic and very straightforward. It's all the paddling that's going on underneath. Got nearly 70 people involved in the team. We've never met in person. Everything has been done via Zoom. And we have a meeting just to show you. I mean, it's not just like we meet every so often. I've been in a meeting this morning. I'm here now. We've got a meeting at 7 o'clock tonight with all the team leaders, because everyone, like myself, we all have other things that we have to do. And we said, well, when can we meet? And we do meet the team leaders once a week to keep updated. And to get everyone in, the earliest time was to get everyone available was 7 o'clock. 7 o'clock on a Wednesday evening. So just to give you an idea of the time, and this is just the time when we get to meet. The things that are going on in between whiles does take up a lot of time, but the more volunteers we have, and the more we get used to it, I think the easier it is for us. I can see Roger has his hand up.
Yes, and we do understand that projects have difficulties and require development time and have setbacks. Just look at Beacon too, but we're not going down that road. But you've got a project management software in place. You've talked about how you are managing the project. You therefore have got targets. Don't you think we're mature enough to know what some of those might be?
We have targets. Yeah, for
You're not telling us what they are.
Yeah, I mean, at some point, if you notice, one of the things I think we need a manager, a coordinator for open projects. So that's the point. If you say we've got project management software, we need someone to take over and run that project. So we're building up the team as we develop the project. Yes, we have, I've mentioned the targets, the definite targets. We have 2 years. We've said we will hope to have everything migrated.
Starting when?
Pardon?
Starting when? I need to report to my committee a target date when this may or may not be relevant to our U3A.
I can't tell you that.
I need to have my webmaster geared up to move forward. Is it in a year, 2 years, or 5 years?
Well, one of the things you might say is that they can, and I did mention this, one of the things that people can be doing is looking at the training materials, so that when they come on schedule and it comes on stream, then people would be ready to go. But I don't have a time scale. I can't give you a time scale at the moment. It sounds a long while. 6 months sounds a long while, but to start a project from nothing, using volunteers that have never met in person, to get to the stage that we're at, where we've got testing is happening now. And as soon as the testing is complete, the rollout will happen. We don't know what's going to be thrown up. We're still waiting for the final hosting because that's still being negotiated. It's not as straightforward as it might seem. And I can understand, like my u3a, it's saying, when is it going to happen? But I'm in a position to say, I genuinely don't know. I genuinely don't know.
Okay.
So,
that's absolutely fair enough. I think we'll leave that point just for now, shall we? Move on to Susan. Is it something else related on this point?
Yeah, just to
Chris
say,
has given quite a full answer now.
Yeah, just to say, training is most useful when you can immediately use it. So it's important that the scheduling of the training, even the induction training, happens a short time before you're actually using it. So the whole sequence needs to work together. And I'm sure with your project planning, you'll be doing some of that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Next question on the chat. Migration implies that the new site is an exact copy of the Site Builder site. Will training cover how the user experience can be enhanced by adopting new authoring paradigms?
Do you mean how
by paradigms?
well, no, what do you mean by the whole thing? All new authoring paradigms?
That's Richard Crowder from Romsey and Archway u3a, unless he wants to expand on that.
Yeah, would you like to expand on what you're saying there?
Richard?
Yes, thank you. What I was getting at is if we're moving, you talk about migration, and that implies that what you've got on your Site Builder website, everything moves across to the new website. But
it moves across to the new website, but
yes,
certain things you would have to put in separately. Yeah. For example, the images won't go into the same place because the gallery on Site Builder is totally different, managed in a totally different way on SiteWorks. So if you noticed on the website when I showed you the Worcester, that just quick
that's what I'm getting at. In other words, it may move the text across, but the webmaster of the new version will have to actually effectively reauthor the images, recreate the images, and so there's going to be an awful lot of legwork once the migration's done to bring that site back up to
there would still be putting in the images where they go. Part of the checklist will be, which images do you want to use? And obviously, if you say obviously, when you build a website, because I've used Dreamweaver, they say you do have your images folder, so you know what you're going to need to put in. You may need to put new ones in, so you keep all of those images. And then it's a case, they won't go across in the same way as they are on Site Builder. It would just be a case of putting your gallery in, or however you want to manage the images, and you upload the images into SiteWorks, and then you can allocate those images. You can use them in 3 or 4 different places, just by clicking a button. So that process is a lot more straightforward than in SiteWorks. But it will need to happen, and that would be included as part of the training process, how you put an image in. So you're not going to get a duplicate of your SiteWorks site. You're going to get a site where you can change the layout and make the layout more functional, more appropriate and more effective, really. So it kind of addresses what you're saying. There will be some work to do, but that will be explained to the u3as at the when they do the migration training.
That's what I was getting at, the migration.
Yeah, to be aware of the. I thought you were thinking about things like to make your website more effective. You get lots of information about making your website more effective.
I think
that would be future training. That would be a future training thing. That's a different thing from recreating what you have on your Site Builder site on your WordPress or your SiteWorks site. Hope that makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah. But I think people will be impressed by if you haven't used WordPress, they will be impressed by how you can change the layout of your pages and make them look much more effective.
Yeah, because it's always said that doing a website is actually editing the white space. But
And all right, thanks for that. Well, I will just put in, and people who've used it will know that in Site Builder, if you have a person who's a group leader of more than one group, in order to put a contact in for them, you have to do that in several places. Yeah, you have to do a different one for each group you coordinate. You have a different link. In SiteWorks, it's one. Your name goes in once, and you will be allocated your permission levels. And if you're a group leader, you can just be boom, that person's in there. And it's the same link. So you don't have to recreate that link all the time. There are a few little things that make it much more, once you know it, it's much more, if you think, oh, that's really quick, just do it once. Oh, that's quick. Yeah. So it's you know, when if you go through the demo and have a look at what Nick shows you, he shows you the layout and how you can make things more flexible. Really good. It's a 24-minute video, and it makes you think, oh, yeah, that's really useful. And I can see Frances has her hand up, and Frances has already looked at it, and I think you would agree with me, Frances.
Yes, that's exactly what I was going to say. If you look at the video, you can see the layout. And if I'm understanding the migration correctly, it will be collecting all the email addresses, so you don't have to type them in individually. It'll be putting them, it'll be filling them into the spaces in WordPress so that they're ready for you to use. So I'll
so
watch the video.
The information will be there, and it's once you've got it, it's simply a case of putting it where it needs to be. So yeah.
Okay, could I move on to the next couple? Again, a couple I'm going to amalgamate here. Relating to if you know you're on the schedule for being migrated, and how is the order of migration of the sites to be decided?
At the moment, it's arbitrary. The ones that the pioneers were basically the ones who have, they were all experienced web managers who'd come forward and offered their services. The migration schedule, they are still talking about how it's going to work for the U3As. You know, one of them, we haven't talked about alphabetical order, because that wouldn't be very good if you were Walthamstow or somewhere. But it'll be, I don't know how it's going to be. We're still negotiating it. I would personally like it to be on how the first people who responded to the form. So we've got a list of people who came in a certain order. I would like it to be like that, but I am not the only person. It's just my view. So it's an arbitrary thing. It's I'm going to say first come, first serve, but it was the form. When they filled the form in, that information is up there when they came in. How it happens in future, the people doing the migration, the other members of the team may have other views on that. But the schedule, when they have a schedule and when they know how it's going to happen, that will be announced along with everything else.
Okay. Next up, if we have not too huge a content in Site Builder, could we consider building from scratch at the SiteWorks rather than migrating?
Say that again?
If we don't have a large amount of content on our Site Builder website, could we consider building from scratch in SiteWorks rather than going through the migration process?
Yes, I thought that was what you said, but I just wanted to be clear. Yes, in answer to the question. I think I intend to do that with my U3A. We're only a small U3A. Our Site Builder site's not big, and I think I would like to start with the site, the empty vessel, and just recreate it and build it anew from there. So yes, that is a possibility.
I've got another one here relating to, I think, probably the hosting structure. Site Builder is effectively a single system with subdomains for each U3A. Will SiteWorks be the same, or will each U3A have an individual domain?
I can't say that. I'm not techie enough to know what the intention is, but I think that will be something that will be discussed by the hosting team. So you're saying each U3A will have its individual domain, which you have with Site Builder. No, you don't with Site Builder, do you?
No, it's a subdomain, so it's U3A sites.org.uk / the name of your U3A, isn't it?
I think it would be. I can't say, but I think it might be for sure. But I think it could be along the lines of, in my case, it would be Prestatyn Willand district.siteworks.u3a.org.uk, words to that effect. So, but I don't know. That will be for the techie people. I can ask that question. If you some of these things that I can't answer, if they can be collated at the end, I can send them into the FAQs.
We always save the chat anyway.
So that's great. Then some of them can go and I can pass them on to the appropriate people to say, and some of them you might not have the answer to yet, but in future when we do have the answer, they can go as part of the FAQs. So was that particularly about the domain names really, and how the hosting, how it's going to be? Are they all going to be hosted as individual sites? Is that what the thing was about?
Yeah. Yes, I think so.
yeah, that's how I understood it.
I think Sue Foy's got something on this.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm not sure which microphone I'm on. I would have thought, in answer to the last question, that what you'll do is use subdomains on SiteWorks and then use URL masking to point your own domain name at that subdomain on SiteWorks. That's what we do currently with U3A sites. So I would imagine it's just going to carry on.
Something like that. I don't know. It'll depend on where the hosting company is and how they manage it, and which is the best thing. And it'll be. I know Alison would be part of the discussion process and things. So, but I can't say that at the moment. As soon as we know, we'll let U3As know.
Actually, I think you can do that regardless of whatever else happens. You can still do it.
Right.
Yeah, there's nothing that you can't stop a U3A doing that if they're in control of their own domain name.
Oh no, I see what you mean. If you bought your own domain name.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yes. Yeah. No.
Yeah.
It was just I was reading it as a site builder, the current site builder U3As, migrated, how that hosting takes place. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because people can do that. I mean, they can buy their own hosting provision, but if you, without being too over the top, I think if you do your own, you have to make sure that the domain and the server you use, etc., that company is backed up, etc.
Sorry, just to clarify, that really wasn't what I was suggesting.
Oh, okay.
We have our own domain name. Currently, we use URL masking to just point our domain name at the SiteWorks.
Oh, I see. I'm with you.
Yeah. So it's just like swinging a signpost.
Yeah.
We will, I imagine, set up a new website and then just move our URL masking on our domain name to point to that new website. And I think
I understand what you mean now. Yeah, I was thinking you were talking about the hosting, etc.
Yeah.
Okay. Next one I've got is Chris W at Tunbridge Wells. Will there be any provision for a U3A email service component?
That is currently under discussion. I can't say yes or no, but it is currently being talked about. It is a priority for a lot of U3As, and we are looking at that. Because it's not currently a provision of Site Builder. So it would be something in addition. But it is currently being looked at and talked about. I will tell you that now. And if it happened, it would come out as an update in a future release. But it isn't included as part of this this project that's coming out at the moment, the one we're working on now, because it is just to do a like for like. This is a Site Builder, this is SiteWorks, but things like that, and along with the beacon integration, are something that will be looked at and will be considered for future. Whether or not it will happen, it should be. People tell me it should be quite straightforward, but I don't know about that. But it is being considered.
Okay, a couple of WordPress related things. First was somebody who basically said, I don't know what a plugin is effectively. That was a simple question. And the second was about updating of the WordPress core in terms of, is that likely to involve a resource time-wise for the individual U3A, or will that be done centrally?
Right. I'll do that one first. So update the core updates, major update releases. One of the things we've talked about and we would hope to implement will be that it would happen centrally. So if there's an update that has come from WordPress, rather than pass it over to each U3A to do that individually, to do the update, certain things that would be part of the functionality of WordPress we would hope, and we intend, I'm not going to say we would hope, we intend that to be managed centrally. Because we would know then, as far as the resources and things that we had to create were concerned, it's all consistent. Does that make sense? So the onus isn't on the U3A. The onus for release of updates, we would want to be able to do that from a central point.
Mm-hmm.
And just in the same way that Beacon is at the moment, Beacon does an update and they tell you when it's going to happen. So yeah, that intention. Now the other one, what was the other? I've lost track of the first.
Well, it was yes, it was the basic. Somebody didn't understand what a plugin was, and obviously that's a WordPress.
Oh, what's a plugin? Yeah, the plugins. Yeah. I had to find out myself. Plugins are additional functionality that you can be added. For example, venue booking, calendars. So lots of different calendars out there, ways of managing your group. Any little things that make the. In fact, the email one could actually be the question about an email. The email client within SiteWorks could potentially be a plugin, because there are plugins out there apparently that would manage that, but they would have to be integrated into the SiteWorks solution. So a plugin is just a little additional app, if you like, that links into SiteWorks and gives additional functionality.
Will each u3a address be a subset of SiteWorks, or can we have individual addresses?
I think it'll be individual addresses. Do you mean, well, sorry, are we talking about web addresses?
Alan Aldridge asked this question.
Can I come in?
Yeah.
Thank you, yes.
Yeah. Basically, when you have a subdomain, you can't, as I understand it, do things like hashtags. So it's very, very difficult to provide search facilities for our U3A in Google or other search. If you have a domain name, you can do things like that. So I was interested in how that, and I think the earlier question slightly answered it, because the lady said about masking and basically a signposting. So maybe that is the answer, but you understand there's a big difference between having your own domain name and having a subset of the U3A.
Yeah. So I understand what you're saying, but I'm not. Are you talking about optimizing for Google searches and things like that?
Yes, so, that is part of it. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what was it? Sorry, I can't quite hear very well some of the question. Can you repeat the question again? That point.
It's whether or not we would basically, the address we use, is it a subset of siteworks.org.uk, or is it our own address? Could we have an address?
I see what you mean.
benfleetu3a.org.uk, which allows us then to optimize for search engines, but then signpost to our own site. Sorry, our own set.
I understand now. I can't say that for sure, but what I would suggest, if you put that in the questions, I can take that to the people looking at the hosting, because it would be part of the hosting thing, isn't it? Because it would mean, wouldn't it, that for each individual U3A, you'd have to buy the domain name if it wasn't a subset.
Yeah, that would be quite reasonable, but we wouldn't be hosting a major site. That's, it's much easier to do that.
Yeah, to buy the individual domain names for each U3A if they were available. I'll ask about that. I'll ask how it's going to be managed.
Okay, thank you very much.
I can get a copy of the chat and I can pass that to the relevant people.
Okay, Jackie Gill from Derby's got will password protected areas for members be available on WordPress?
Yes, you can set up password protection. You can have password protected pages.
Brilliant.
Yeah. That's a function that's already in there.
Okay.
So basically you can have a front end that's public view, and then the members area that is in there.
Okay, I'm going to have.
I just wanted to confirm, Chris, that'll be part of the core functionality that's supported, rather than it's
I'm pretty sure it is. If you look at the video, it's on there that you can have password protection. I will just confirm, but I would say yes, you can. You can password protect areas.
So if I wanted to then take it to the next level, rather than just at the full membership level, if we wanted to then do things for group leaders, is that, because that's a second level of password protection.
Yes.
Whether that's decided on or whether that's under consideration, because that's really the area I'm most interested in.
I know you can set up password protection, and that facility is in there. I'm pretty sure it is. And if I've got it wrong, you can shoot me. But I am pretty sure it is in there.
So it both for membership, for renewing the membership, and for group coordinators to be able to do things for their own groups.
Oh, I don't.
Membership. That's the level I'm talking about.
I don't know about renewing the membership functionality, because that isn't in Site Builder, is it? That's a beacon function.
It is, but it could be put into your website, so you can do it from the website.
That isn't part of the core provision to be able to do membership renewal. You can have your download your online form, but it's not actually in the SiteWorks at the moment. No.
So what's the use case for the password protection that you're providing? I thought the whole purpose of the password protection was to allow you some of those things.
The password protection would be for things that you didn't want the public to see. You know, you could have a chat area or something like that was just for the u3a to use. But it's not to do with managing membership. That's where the link to Beacon would be very useful. Because Beacon, if for example, this is just an example, if you'd still have to log in, but one simple way would be to have a login on the site, on a SiteWorks page that took you to Beacon, if that makes sense. But to have membership renewal through Beacon, through SiteWorks itself, it's not in this current version of SiteWorks.
So
but if that's something that, I was going to say, if it's something that would be useful, if you put it in the chat, I can pass that on to people that need to see it, because it'd be like a duplication of things. But you can have password protected pages.
It was, in my mind, the question was, would groups be able to manage their own pages, and therefore you'd need to have a different level of protection? That was part of the...
that group leaders can manage their own pages, yes. And that would be a login. That would be, they would have a different level of access when they go in. They would have a login. Is that what you were meaning?
Well, it was at both levels. One was obviously managing the web pages for the groups, ideally communicating with the members of the group, and then obviously the membership renewal. But that I understand is linked to Beacon. So I understand. But at least you can manage your own web page for your group.
Yes. They can manage their own web page for the group.
Thank you.
They can manage their own web page for the group, but whether or not they can contact each of the group members through SiteWorks, I can't answer that. I don't think that's a function. But you can look after your own page on your, which you can in Site Builder. You can group leaders can update their own pages and put their own images in. That works now, and that is part of the SiteWorks provision. Yes, you can do that.
I presume, Chris, that the current situation is you can actually link from a WordPress site into Site Builder and the email contact management there directly just by using a hyperlink.
So say that again.
You can link to a Site Builder email for group leaders, etc., just purely from a link from any WordPress site.
Yeah.
So it should be the same for SiteWorks.
Yes, yeah, you can do that. You can, yeah.
Using
the email addresses would be hidden. They'd be on the system, but you could click on the name of the person, email this person, or whatever, however it's set up. Is that what you're referring to? So
that's what I'm referring to.
Yeah, the information is there for that. Yeah.
We've got two more hands up.
Yes, Ian, I think was first. Ian Holland from Stanton.
Hi. We were talking about signposting to the Site Builder. We've set up through Google at £10 per annum u3a.org, which then points at Site Builder. So presumably we'll use the same thing, then it'll just point at SiteWorks.
You're breaking up a bit there.
Sorry.
Can you just say that again? I'm leaning closer so I've got my volume turned right up.
Okay. At Hunstanton, we have gone through Google and paid £10 per annum to get a web address, Hunstanton u3a.org and use that address to point at Site Builder. So we will use that same address.
Oh, yeah, I can't see why that wouldn't work because you're using Google to point to it.
Yeah, true that. We are already pointing at Site Builder, and I presume we will then point at the link will then be to WordPress, to SiteWorks.
Yeah, you'd have to test it, but I can't see why it wouldn't work.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'd have to try that out. I'm just laughing. I know Hunstanton or Hunston.
Sunny
Hunston.
Yeah, indeed.
I lived in a village in Great Massingham, which is only about 13 miles away.
Oh yes.
Used to go to Hunstanton quite often. So,
okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Steve, I can see Steve.
Thank you.
Thanks. Steve from Northampton.
Yeah, sorry. Now, when Chris started speaking about password protections in SiteWorks, I think she said it was available in WordPress. Did you mean that, or is it a functionality of?
I am pretty sure
SiteWorks?
that you can. I'm pretty sure it's actually in SiteWorks. Yeah, I'm pretty sure
It's in SiteWorks. It's not in WordPress itself, is it?
It isn't. It's on. I'll check with Nick. I'm getting.
I mean, I would have expected SiteWorks to provide the,
I'm
the levels of
sure
protection.
I'm pretty sure it's in SiteWorks.
WordPress are just the pages you're making available.
It's at our site, our SiteWorks website. I did have password protection in parts of that, so it's available in WordPress anyway in the template that Nick made, and I am pretty sure it's in the SiteWorks solution as well, but I will confirm.
I mean, obviously in Beacon we can direct certain information the public can see, and that is there's a greater amount of information available from members if they're using the group pages. So I wouldn't have thought it was difficult to do that. It's just a shame that there seems to be a lot of repetition between Beacon and what SiteWorks will offer. I mean, originally I thought there was going to be a lot more links to it, but as you say, that it doesn't necessarily work for every U3A. And I say, although we use Beacon, we don't link it enough to our website for it to be dual. You know, things have to be altered in two places, not in one, unfortunately. But
I think the idea of single sign-on is very appealing, isn't it? You sign in once.
Well, I think it's easier. Well, and I mean, it's easy enough to link to the members portal through a website. And you're talking about membership applications. I mean, a lot of sites I've seen do have membership pages where you can log in and join, not necessarily through Beacon.
Yeah.
So it's possible, but I suppose it's horses for courses. But it would be better if we had one type of horse running on one type of course sometimes, I think.
Yeah, I do agree, to make things easier. I'm sure there are plugins that manage membership anyway, but that is not included as part of the initial solution. But because the idea of using WordPress to create the SiteWorks solution is that it is flexible, and going forward, it's not going to go away. It's going to be developed as time goes on. So it's robust and sustainable. So things that people are coming up with now, if they're not there in the first iteration, if you like, in later ones, people will look at them, have time, because we wouldn't want to put anything out that hasn't been tested and isn't robust enough. I
think you mentioned about WordPress updates and such like. They would be managed by SiteWorks. But when people are talking about domains and such like, I would have thought any updates to SiteWorks you want to be doing through the links that the U3As would have to that, or to the SiteWorks program, in the same way as Beacon does the updates. We don't have to do any updates on our own sites.
That's it.
And I'm sure if you were going through your own hosting, or your own domain name, you'd have to provide updates to individuals rather than doing it all in one go. I don't understand fully, but I know the updating system on Beacon works quite well.
It works well, doesn't it?
Yeah. Okay.
So,
thank you. Thank you.
I think going forward, I mean, these are things for discussion and things to take on board, and certainly rollout of updates would be one that would be better in some instances, not all, better managed centrally so everyone is updated at the same time. But that said, because all u3as are individual and there were different versions of it being worked on, it would have to be thought about and considered, just to make sure that we are doing the right thing. But also plugins, the updates to be made available for people who wanted to do it themselves. So it wouldn't be, we will do it for you, but there is also this option. I think that would have to be included as part of it.
Thank you.
Okay, Chris, we're now 10 to 3, so we've gone way over normal time. Two more final questions and I'll call it a day. Can I build a site now in local that could be used for migration?
They've been talking about doing that to go from one to the other. So on local, it would have to be moved onto a testing site, somehow migrated onto a testing site, and then eventually so that it could be made sure that everything, the functionality is appropriate so the testing people can look at it. And then, I don't see why not, but I would have to ask. I think this has already been raised within the team anyway. I can't remember what the answer was, but I can find out that for you, because it would be a useful thing to do, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
To be able to
Mike Field has something on this, I think.
Yeah, I think the answer to that is that if you build something locally, you've got to have the same basic setup, which means the same add-ins, plugins, etc. We've run our own sites because we moved to it a while ago, and we found that we selected the plugins that we used very carefully, and unless they match exactly what you're using, it would not be a straightforward process to move from our existing setup to the SiteWorks system. It depends on the plugins more than anything else.
That's a good point.
And it also loses the consistency that you said you were aiming for earlier, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's a good point, because the SiteWorks we'd have be using the approved plugins. Yeah, so that is a good point. That's an important consideration there. Migrating local, if it didn't have any additional functionality, you had your main site ready to go with no additional plugins. I presume that could go, and then you'd add the plugins afterwards or whatever. But no, I'll have to talk to people about that. Yeah, that's a good point.
Okay, a related question, the final one, okay, you'd be pleased to hear, was from Alan Nolan at Orton and Ormskirk. Would there be a path for existing WordPress sites to migrate to u3a SiteWorks?
The path for them to do it, I don't know about that. I don't know about the path. I don't think, we can't rule anything out, but at the moment that isn't something that's been particularly thought about. But I think it could be. I think it could be something that could become quite important, because if they do come across onto the trust provision, it does mean that you've got the backup of the trust behind you. That makes sense. Because if people doing their own thing, you have to make sure you've got everything backed up and everything, your data protection, everything is in place, your security. If you go with the trust solution, then that happens for you. That's already been thought about. So that is a consideration. And that's another point I would, from the chat, I'll take that back to the team and get them to think about. Yeah, it's a possibility.
I wonder if Vivek could quickly do his other poll for us.
Yes.
So if people could answer, I put the poll number up, and we're just trying to get a feel for, amongst the audience that's still with us, what's the kind of interest and involvement and knowledge of the Beacon system. And obviously we started to touch today on the issue of how the two might interact. And then obviously there's some capability within SiteWorks that'll work independent of Beacon. I'll give a couple more seconds and then I'm going to close the poll. And I'm just sharing the results. And the results are basically the vast majority of the people who are still with us are currently using Beacon. And in the earlier polls, the majority were using Site Builder. So it looks like the audience today is in that group of having both systems. I'll just run the last poll. And that's really just to get an idea of the people here, how deep is their involvement in Beacon? So if people could answer this question, but only if you are using Beacon in your u3a. Please don't answer this if you're not using Beacon, because we're just trying to get an idea of the audience who's still with us. So it's looking like that, that about half, just over half, are Beacon admin, and then lots of people are using it with similar share. And these are multi-choice questions, so group leaders, committee roles, and Beacon administrators. Yeah. So I'll close the poll now.
Can you just share that one? Yes, close it.
Yeah, I'm just going to share the results, so people can see again of the people, and most people were part of u3as, which were Beacon users, and then you've got kind of just over half wearing different hats between Beacon admin, being a member of the committee, and being a group leader. Anyway, back to you, Kathy.
Thank you very much, Vivek.
Can I just say something there? It'd be interesting to see how many of those that have answered, confirmed Beacon administrator, committee role, and group leader, if how many of them are actually the same person.
Oh yes, quite a lot of them will be the same person.
I can see Peter's got his hand up. I've got my hand up. Yeah, I think that's the thing, isn't it?
We've got 75 responses there from only 46 people.
Yeah.
We'll see if we can answer one of Chris's questions. Chris has answered lots of our questions.
I didn't know that's really good. Because I know in my u3a it's the same thing, and it'd be interesting to see, to generalise, it's the same people that run u3as in all the different aspects of it. I think that's interesting.
Yes, so thank you very much indeed, Chris, for all your time and patience and answers, and it's been really, really amazing. Thank you very much indeed.
Well, I hope it was useful. I know I didn't give you the information that you hoped you were going to get, because I don't have that information, and it's not that it's just that I don't have the information.
Absolutely clear enough. Absolutely fair enough. Yes, thank you so much.
If people do, if you've got spare, you're running your group, you're running your u3a, if you haven't got any spare time, we are looking for volunteers in certain areas that you can see on the website. So thank you all, and thank you for your questions, that the ones that I couldn't answer as well, because they are important for me to take back to the people, the team, and say this is what people need to know, and this is what we actually need to think about. So thank you all as well. I enjoyed it. I'm surprised what the time is,
Yes, I know.
Thank you very much. Excellent.
Thank you.
Really enjoyed it. Thank you. Very helpful.
And many of you know this already, but I will just plug the fact that you can get notice of what's going on from the two u3a Facebook groups, the Keeping in Touch group and the Let's Talk Tech group. And you can join the latter one if you're not a member already, and ask questions and discuss all sorts of other things relating to various items of tech. So with that, I think we will probably wrap up, and thank you all very much for coming and your patience in staying with us, and particularly Chris for all her hard work on SiteWorks in general, and in particular.
Thank you, I enjoyed it, and I'll probably join your group. I have been before, and I will try and join it, come in more frequently.
Excellent. We look forward to seeing you.
Yes.
I mean, one of the requests I had, Chris, was when there's a major announcement that SiteWorks wanting to have, then in the following couple of weeks, it'll be good to have somebody from the team or whether it's you or whether it's somebody else,
Yeah.
who can then answer the questions in this format, which is much more interactive rather than a formal training session, which is much more prepackaged.
That makes sense as well. I was also thinking as well, and I thought this is what you were going to say as well, as another point would be that if we do have a major announcement, put it on send it to you to go up on your website.
Yes.
As well, you know,
We'd love
update
to,
from SiteWorks. I mean, we could do that. We could include you in our update thing. Update from SiteWorks. How would you feel about that?
Excellent.
Yes,
Love it.
And put it on the Facebook group, the closed Facebook group as well, because we've got
that's
a lot of web editors on there. That'd be really useful.
So I'll make sure that you go on the list of contacts, or you send out an update so you can publish it. Because I think the more places you put the information, the more people it will hit.
Yes,
that makes sense.
Communication is a great thing.
Yeah.
Thank you.